Okay, let's continue on with and finish this up. Um, I was talking about the STEP Act, and there are other legal ramifications for being involved in a gang, as well as uh, participating in a gang. So, in other words, some police officers in certain areas, if they see a group of juveniles that they believe to be participating in gang activity, they can disrupt it. They can also arrest them. Another intervention that was created is the Boston Gun Project, and this targeted firearms use by gangs. And this was pretty popular. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about this or not, but they did the pulling over approach to deter behavior by really taking a zero tolerance in regards to any activity that was gang related. But it was considered a form of legal harassment. But it was found to significantly decrease several offenses, including homicides and assaults with firearms. There was also another project called Project Tough, and this originated in Los Angeles to take out the urban gang headquarters, where they filed injunctions against gang members to stay away from certain property. It was um, kind of a collaboration of a number of departments that were working together to try to alleviate the gang problem by preventing gangs from meeting in certain places. And I want you to notice this, the burden of proof was a preponderance of the evidence rather than proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And wanted to mention too, as I was mentioning a second ago about that book that I was telling y'all about, and it's called, it was written in 1993 by a former gang member, and his name is Shakur, Shakur, and the name of the book is Monster, the autobiography of an LA gang member. And in that book, it's a really good book if you can ever read it. And I wish I could require it because it's one of those that you'll never forget. But he talks about his life in a gang and how he went into the gang because he didn't want to be a victim, and how he was so proud when he committed his first homicide, and that he was shot by a number of people, and he was in prison, and I mean, in the hospital, and then he was committed to juvenile detention and incarceration, and he continued his behavior as soon as he was out. And what was interesting was when he was incarcerated, he would say that, oh, he finally was relaxed. He didn't feel the threat of somebody going to kill him at any time, and he got to eat. And now he was one that his mother did everything she could. It was what they grew up with. It was everywhere in all parts of their neighborhood. And he tried to get out of the gang and had to go and get special permission. He was in his 20s though. But there was a lot of barriers against him just trying to clean his life up and trying to get away from the gangs. Because he was on probation, on parole, he couldn't leave a certain area of Los Angeles, and that's where the gang headquarters were. And he was trying to go to another jurisdiction to work, and they wouldn't permit it. But anyway, it's a great book if you can ever get the chance to read it. As I said, it was 1993. But let's continue with the gang's intervention. The GREAT, which I just mentioned a minute ago, which is the GREAT program, the Gang Resistant Education and Training, began in 91 under a grant in order to help police officers in the middle schools, because as I mentioned, that is the age when the gang activity is really prevalent. And this program provides youth with the necessary skills to learn how to identify a high risk situation and how to resist the pressure of a gang and the gang activity. This great program was very innovative, and it was there to teach the youth that which they had never been taught, the skills they had not learned anywhere else. This is the curriculum. It was Welcome to Great, What's the Real Deal? It's about us. Where do we go from here? Decisions, decisions. Do you hear what I'm saying? Walk in someone else's shoes. Say it like you mean it. Getting along without going along. Getting your cool. Keeping it together. Working it out. Looking back. As you notice, These topics are all topics to attract the teenager. So it's not the topics that you would hear in a normal middle school program. Oops, I'm sorry. It's also a 6-week program for fourth and fifth graders, a 6-session family program, trying to bring in the family. And what we see when working with juveniles, the best way to prevent recidivism and any offending is to have the family involved. Many times when a juvenile gets to the juvenile justice system, and for instance, I was telling all y'all about working with juvenile sex offenders. When we got those boys, they were at a point the parents had just given up. They were just like, here, take them, please, do something with them. We can't do anything. And they got to that point over a long period of time of dealing with the system and trying to get assistance. So if we can get the family involved and the family interacting and is accountable as that juvenile, we can accomplish a lot. After the curriculum was finished, the evaluation was very positive. They felt a camaraderie, a tie-in, a buy-in, working with the police and all the authorities. There are a lot of strategies with the gang intervention, as we see the suppression, social intervention, organizational change. Unfortunately, it was not as positive as the membership, the group membership believed it would be. The impact on gangs and crime came up with a mixed result. Just a quick overview of what we talked about in Chapter 5. There are many methods of intervention. Some suggest that intervention exasperates the problem, in that intervening in their what they're doing can increase. Most programs do not address the major underlying cause of gang behavior, the lack of social opportunities. As I said, they join gangs because they have no other companionship, no other route but to join gangs, be a victim or be a member. Arrest, prosecution, and incarceration remain the mainstay of our response. In order to stop gangs, that's what we do. We arrest them, and what happens when you incarcerate juveniles is they actually learn to be better criminals. And when you put a juvenile into a facility where there's other gang members, they will become more attached to those gang members because that's who's there. That's who's there. And what you hear a lot of times now is, in prisons and adult prisons where they divide the prisons up and they have certain gangs in certain areas. And a lot of opponents to that don't believe that they should be interacting. Well, we do that to prevent more violence and more deaths by keeping the gangs together. And we do that as well with juveniles. All right, let's move to Chapter 6. We're going to talk about drug use and delinquency. These are the most important points that you need to know after you read this chapter. The Monitoring the Future project was a survey of 8th, 10th, and 12th graders to measure drug use. In other words, this is they are volunteering the information, so it's a self-reported survey. Trend data for drug use over time shows fairly consistent reductions in use. It shows that there's a high marijuana use, but controlled substances and the more harder drugs of cocaine and crack, those are more experimental. There's not really, they're not doing it. Of course, you have the ones that are the dealers and are doing it just to collect money, but the actual relationship between behavior and drugs is, but you have delinquency because of drugs, and then you have drugs because of delinquency. And mentioned down here, drug treatment. I have worked for many years with drug treatment facilities, and there's no one type of treatment that is the most effective. The one that I have seen, and we'll talk about this more, is cognitive behavioral therapy. That kind of therapy is conducted with all kinds of offenders, and it works best with aggressive behaviors and offending behaviors. And when we talk about the drug use and the drug treatment, that's incorporated into these other programs. But whenever a child is admitted into a treatment program, there is a individual treatment plan that is designed, and it's designed with the offender, the adolescent, and his parents. If they, I say his because that's what I worked with the parents if they're available, and it gives out the goals and of that juvenile and how they're going to achieve those goals. And as I said, it's all individual. There's no one type of treatment or program that's going to work for every juvenile. And sorry, I tend to go on and on. That's why I did these in presentations so we don't take up class time talking about this information. Make sure as you're going through these PowerPoints that you write down any questions that you have, anything that's not clear that you're reading your book, and anything you want me to expand upon in the class. Opponents of juvenile drug use, which because it is a crime and it does lead to future criminality, there's a lot of weaknesses and strengths. And as we see, the Just Say No program has not been shown to be productive. The DARE program has not shown to be productive. One of the most successful alternatives, there's actually two. One is listed here, and that's the drug courts, and also the peer courts. And as I mentioned, these types of courts are called specialty courts. They're problem-solving courts where they specialize in one area. And the drug courts specialize in drug use. So within those courts, you have the judge who's not overshadowing the procedures. They work as a part of the team, and they're usually the facilitator to make sure everybody's doing as they need to do. You have therapists, you have probation officers, you have caseworkers, you'll have parents, hopefully, you have program administrators, you have the treatment program coordinators. Everybody works together with that juvenile and sets up an individual plan so they can succeed and get the treatment they need. Before we get into the evidence of why youth abuse drugs, and some of the issues that we're going to see, let's define some topics. The use refers to taking a drug non-medically for personal enjoyment. Abuse, defined as any action that intentionally harms or injures another person. Addiction refers to the chronic use of the drug that causes an individual to need to continue the use of the drug, increases the amount of the drug used, and that's because they build up uh, that resistance to drugs after they've used it for a long time. It just takes more for them to get the same high. We want to discuss the extent of drug use. It's very difficult to wage that, and we do that through self-reported surveys. But however, when you're dealing with juveniles, you get a lot of incorrect responses as well as just responses to make it up. The MTF project gathers information on a wide varieties of behavior, including levels and types of drugs. There's also the Pew Center. They have collected information on every topic you can imagine, and juvenile drug use is one of those, as well as juvenile offending. The SAMHSA, which is it's a survey from the National Survey of Drug Use and Health, and it records lifetime, annual, and past month drug use. They also are big advocates of promoting more intervention with drug use within the schools and all types of programs. The findings are that trend data on monthly drug use suggests similar conclusions. Alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana have dominated. And as we've said, alcohol use has significantly decreased over the past 30 years to a lower figure, but it's because the use of marijuana has increased. Excuse me. Prevalence indicates how many respondents use the drug, and incidence indicates how many times the drug was used. The findings, only 6% claim daily use of marijuana. And as I said, this is the claiming of daily use. I do want to say that a lot of these percentages have been shown to be pretty accurate. The amount of daily use is not as high as we think. But when we look at juveniles, especially in some of the more rural areas, you're going to see that the use extends more on out of school time and weekends. Adolescent drug use, let's remember, is a problem, even though it appears that it has declined. Right now, we look at a connection of between drugs and delinquency, and as I said, that drugs cause delinquency, and delinquency causes drug use. Example: a youth may commit a property crime to secure the funds to purchase drugs. Taking drugs may also cause a juvenile to commit a delinquent act. They would be more apt to commit it under the influence. Drugs have direct effect on the user, and the systematic violence refers to violence due to factors such as competition between dealers, retaliation for sale of drugs. This is when you're dealing with manufacturing as well as trafficking. Research on the drug use and delinquency reveals a complex relationship. Johnson claims that the general delinquency predates most drug use. Therefore, youthful drug use is simply an extension of other deviant behavior, in that drug use is just considered delinquent behavior. It's not necessarily relating to any other issues. There are a couple of meanings behind that causes the the causal relationship between drug use and delinquency. We have the reciprocal relationship, that criminal activity leads to drug use and drug use leads to criminal activity, which is really the major basis of the relationship between drugs and adolescence. There's what's called a spurious relationship, and that states that there's other factors that cause both drug use and delinquency, that they're not interrelated in each other. There are a number of interventions. We are always trying to come up with new ways to stop offending, and especially with juveniles, because the earlier that we can intervene, the better that we can do. There are several problems with treatment approaches. It's difficult to motivate addicts. Anytime you're dealing with an addict, and this has to do with any kind of addiction, they have to be willing to change. If they do not want to get the help, you can force it down their throats, but they're going to turn right around and go back. There is the National Institute on Drug Abuse, offers 16 principles of effective drug treatment. The Just Say No approach, which I mentioned a minute ago, has not shown success. Education programs provide youth with information regarding the effects of drugs, and if they are taught in the most positive aspect, there are positive consequences, so they can really understand what their drug use is doing to their body. Of course, we're dealing with adolescents who always believe that they know better than us. The effective approaches focuses on the individual rather than the information on the substances. They look for the weaknesses on that individual and why they're using drugs. Is it because, oh, that's fun, they go to parties, they like to do it? Is it because they are having pain and depression from some other outside force, and therefore they're taking it to desynthesize themselves? Those are very effective approaches. The life skills training approach is somewhat similar to effective approach. It provides youth with the skills to understand how to stop their drug use. And as I mentioned, the DARE program that has just shown that it was not successful. Let's just summarize what we went over about drug use. It all kind of seems to, even when I'm talking about it, it seems like it all interrelates. And as we know, this is different for all different areas. So I want to encourage each of you, even when we're in class on Monday, I want you to think about somebody you know that possibly has a drug abuse problem, in ways that you see in your own life that could help prevent that. When we look at, as a researchers, when we look at prevention and we look at intervention and ways to stop behavior, we're looking at it on a general aspect. As I said, everything is successful in a different way to different people. Okay. But drug use can be impacted by certain types of programs. Programs that emphasize self-esteem, self-awareness, and interpersonal growth in the absence of other strategies fail to exhibit any strong influence. While many prevention programs exist and so promise, most still need to be evaluated. They just haven't been around long enough. And from personal experience working with juveniles and having friends that teach in the lower uh, grades, it's important. Intervention early, first, second, third grade, to talk to these kids. They know so much more than we know that they do, more than we think they do. Alternative responses to drug use. And bear with us, just a couple more slides. We have alternative responses to drug use. We have the increasement of drug laws. We have the 3 strikes laws. We have the war on drugs that is actually, we're not winning it. Anytime you use the word war, it means that there's going to be a winner. There is no winner when you're dealing with drugs and juveniles. Increased enforcement. With the war on drugs, we were really bearing down on anybody using drugs, and that's why our prisons and our youth prisons are full of drug use, of drug crimes. Enforcement coupled with treatment is the way to go when an offender and someone who needs help. Drug courts, as I mentioned, this approach uses the court's authority, and this has been shown to be successful. The first drug court, it was an adult court, and I want to say it was 89, I believe, out of Miami. But they've just now been redirected to deal with juveniles. Breaking the cycle program. This is true with any offending behavior. You have to break the cycle of offending. And when you can show a juvenile or anybody the factors that are causing their behavior, they can tend to break the cycle. We also have the response of legalization or decriminalization of drug use. We've seen this right now in the country with California and Colorado legalizing marijuana. Of course, that is on the state level. It has not been decriminalized by the federal government. There are pros and cons that it's going to increase marijuana use and other drug uses, but also too, it's taxable. So now the state and the federal government are receiving funds from the legalization and the price goes up. There we go. We are at the end. Make sure if you have any questions for me in regards to this, please bring it to class. I'll see y'all Monday.